All right, Joe.
Hey.
We are live. We got a special guest with us.
Special guest with us today.
Good morning, guys.
Good morning. Man.
Pastor Rush with us.
Yeah, we're super excited. This is the Kingsland Connection. Purpose of this is just to extend Sunday into the work week.
Yeah.
And we got the man, the myth, the legend with us.
Man that needs no introduction here.
Yeah.
Honored to be here,
Yeah.
fellas. This has been fun. This new adventure.
Yeah.
Kingsland Connection.
Yeah. It's new. We're having fun with it. Last week we posed a question, which I think it went well with the beans or no beans in your chili.
It did go well.
And so if you're watching right now, we got a new question this week. Sports. Did you watch the playoffs? Did you watch any?
No.
No. Okay.
I did. I turned on a little bit yesterday and watched the Senior Bowl, the Senior
yeah.
Adult Bowl, the
Yes.
Tom Brady versus Drew Brees.
Yes.
Well, we know Eric back here was watching the game. He was
Yeah.
watching his Saints.
Yeah.
His Saints take the
Yeah.
L yesterday.
Big Saints fan.
Probably Drew Brees' last game.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could tell by the end
Yeah.
that he had it in his
So
eyes.
pray for Eric Friedman and Drew Brees.
Yeah.
So, question while you're on Facebook: who's winning the Super Bowl? Just throw out
where's
your
it going?
prediction.
Who's
Put it
winning
on
the
there.
Super Bowl? Bears.
Who's gonna?
I'm just kidding. They're not even in it anymore.
Yeah. Is Mahomes gonna come out from his concussion?
He'll be
I don't
fine.
know.
He'll be fine.
So yeah.
Right. I don't watch much NFL, and it's not.
Yeah.
It's not because I've taken this big stance. And it's not because I am so disciplined. It's like you have to choose something. So I like basketball.
Yeah.
Generally watch basketball, and I'm going to be totally honest with you, and it may hurt some people's feelings. The Houston Texans haven't been very fun to watch since
Yeah.
I've lived in Houston.
Yeah.
So I would love to root for my hometown team, but
Yeah.
it's hard to
Not much
do.
to
It's
root
tough.
for.
So I don't
It's
really
tough.
watch. It's just, and plus, NFL games happen on Sundays. There's a lot going on for us
Yep.
on Sundays, you know. So
there
by the
really
time
is.
I get home, I'm already thinking about next week, and
Yeah.
so nah.
Hey, what's the other question I want to ask? I want to ask another question for the Facebook.
Who's winning Super Bowls?
Who's
the first
winning the
one.
Super Bowl's the first
Buffalo
one?
Bills are winning the Super Bowl.
That'd be amazing.
You think Buffalo Bills?
Yeah.
Interesting. And then my next question is, if you could get really good, like get better at a sport or a skill, what sport or skill would you want to
Wow,
get good
not just a sport, but
Any
a skill.
sport.
Any
Any sport or
skill?
skill. Or
Okay.
skill.
Okay.
Wow.
Like me cooking. I would like to get better
Oh
at
yeah.
cooking.
You need to
Okay,
get better.
not
so you
very good
start
at
with a sport. They could.
I know.
If any sport, I would like to cook.
I would like to get better at cooking.
So start with sports, but then it goes anywhere.
And then it could go anywhere.
Okay.
What do you want to be good at? What do you want to be good at?
Well, if I could be better at any sport, I'd want to be better at basketball, probably. Golf, maybe, because you can
Golf.
play that your whole
Do you
life.
even play?
Yeah.
Do you even get out and play?
Little known truth, and I hate to admit this on air, I've never played golf. Every 10 years or so,
Interesting.
somebody gets me out to play golf.
Yeah.
And I always say I don't play because it's expensive and it takes a long time. I have short attention span. But the most important reason why that you guys can relate to is in any other sport in my life that I've played, if I'm not very good, I can just try harder. You can just give it the effort. If you
Not
do that
with
in
golf.
golf, it gets really,
Not with
really
golf.
bad. So I'll go out and I'll be terrible and I'll say, I'm never playing this again.
Yeah.
Well, our friend Elmo Johnson, pastor of Rosa Sharon Baptist Church in the 4th Ward, is a good friend. He
a
asked
golfer.
me 6 months ago, Pastor, do you play golf? And I said, no, I do not. And I went through my litany of reasons why. And he said, I want to take you golfing. I'm going to give you a golf lesson. So how can you turn down Elmo?
Yeah.
So we go out, and what I appreciated about Elmo is he said, just hit the ball. Just
Just hit the ball.
he didn't tell me sit up
Good
straight
advice.
and
Just hit
bend
the
your
ball.
knees and whatever. Just here, hit the ball, and it made it so much easier. So we haven't been on a course, but we've been in the range multiple times and just having fun.
Is he a golfer? Does he like?
Yes,
golfing?
he is. He's pretty good.
Good.
That's awesome.
But he did share a lesson that I think may somehow apply to what we're talking about. I don't know. Is we golfed for we'd hit the ball for 2 hours that first time. And he said, let me ask, we talked about our sermons and stuff. He said, let me ask you something. What were you thinking about the last 2 hours? And I said, nothing. And he said, that's why you play golf. Just a chance to
right.
escape.
To get-
So we've gone out, but I don't have time or money to go out all day
It
and
is
do
a long
things. But I
day.
have been out at the driving range.
Here's my secret to golf: set your expectation down here.
Yeah, way
real
low.
low.
Yeah.
and then you're never disappointed.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know?
You just have fun.
But the
Just have fun.
non-sports, we're going to give you the non-sports
Yeah,
thing that I
that's
would do
yes.
if I could get better at something. Play the cello.
the cello.
I play the guitar, but I wish so
Specifically the
badly I'd
cello.
learned the cello early on because that's my favorite instrument. Whenever you see a cello on the stage, the worship team's giving me a gift.
Wow.
I love a cello.
That's all
Interesting.
interesting.
I like
Yo-Yo
that a
Ma
lot.
is my man.
Yeah.
Any other cello fans out there?
Anybody-
Bobby, what would you do?
anybody- I don't know, man. I'm pretty good at a lot of stuff. So
Nice.
I don't know. I would, just I'd probably fixing cars. I think
That's a confident man.
Yeah,
He can't even think of anything he'd like to improve on.
Fixing cars.
fixing
is really
car.
good.
Every time I'm like, okay, I got to watch a video or something. I want to be good. I always mess it up. Like I take it apart, I miss a screw. Anyways,
I'm gonna stick with cooking. I just want to get better at cooking.
yeah,
I
I
don't care
could,
what
I
you
could
guys
teach you how to cook.
Yeah.
Joe. Well, enough with sports. Enough with this. Let's jump
Cooking,
into
cellos.
Yeah, cellos.
Golf.
Let's talk about Sunday. Sunday was
It's a great Sunday.
Yeah, it was a really
Sanctity of Life Sunday.
Yeah.
We took up the offering for that. We had a lot of anniversaries that we were
Anniversaries,
celebrating. That was
yeah.
fun.
Yep.
Yeah, and
It's just a good.
part 2 of the sermon series with the Reset sermon series. Last week we talked about lies we tend to believe, and this week we got into the process of healing, the process of going in. Those 3 steps that Jesus said was get
Right.
up, take up, and walk on.
Right.
Brad was out at North Katy. Y'all sermons were very similar. I got to
Yeah, we
hear-
spent a lot of time together. It's one of the fun things about having 2 campuses when we preach the same is we can collaborate all week long.
Yeah, and one of the deals as I got to pray with folks in the garden here at Central,
Good.
and it was just a powerful time. But one of the things as going through this process, how do we make this? It sounds so simple, right? You just get up, take up, and walk on. But I'm thinking about kids. So we have young kids. When we see their predicament, how do we help them through
It's really
this?
good. Yeah. I think the first place to start is to delineate between them. So it's going to help mom and dad also to clearly state what these mean. It's not just some picture that you have. And that helps. That's what preachers have to do before we get up there.
Yeah.
And one way to think about it is if you look at that command, get up, take up, walk on. First thing I had to ask myself is, are these really points? Like, does Jesus just repeating himself, or is he just being practical? And then you realize you can't take away any of those points. They're very significant. So if he just said, get up and walk on, it's not the same story. If he just said, get up and take up your mat, it's not the same story. It's really not the same story if he said, take up your mat and walk on, because he didn't have the power to get up,
Right. Yeah.
So to help kids understand, there are things that God can do that we cannot. And we need to trust him for that. And of course, that creates a wonderful opportunity to speak of grace and salvation and pointing to that with our kiddos and understanding. But after they've been saved, to say, listen, it's not as though we get our ticket to heaven by grace and now we just work really hard. No, we trust him to continue to pull us up and grow us up. And there's going to be times where we've got to trust the Spirit of God working in us.
Right.
And that's every day,
Yeah.
Walk in the Spirit and you'll not fulfill the desires of the flesh. So it's not work really hard and you'll not fulfill the desires of the flesh. So get up and then take up. Well, what is take up? Take up is giving no room for a relapse.
Yeah.
And if those are too big of words for your kiddos to say, you know what, creating a plan where you're not going backwards.
Right.
Yeah.
So-
I love the donut.
Yeah.
That connects with anybody. Like, especially with kids. Like we were talking with Charlie, like, hey, if we're not supposed to be eating sweets, what is it smart to just sit at a donut shop? I think that was
Yeah.
an easy conversation.
Well, yeah,
to
and that
have.
was the passage the verse that stood out, like we were talking about earlier. It was like Romans 13, make no provision for the flesh. To me, I'm looking at that, I'm going,
Yeah,
like,
Romans 13:14.
man,
Isn't that interesting?
What do you practically do at some point?
Yeah.
You have to get practical with some of this stuff and go exactly what you just said. I'm not going to go to the donut shop if I don't want to eat donuts or whatever that is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
and the cell phone stuff. I mean, the examples that you used on Sunday were really, really good. The other thing I thought about too, especially for parents, that have like older kids, junior high and high school, and you've obviously raised a few beautiful daughters that have done pretty well. I feel like as a parent, when you're wrestling through these things yourself, getting up, taking up, and all stuff, like just to allow your kids to see you wrestling with that. Not to be like I have all the answers, but I don't know if you have anything to share with parents that have junior and high school kids, like because parents are probably feeling like I got stuff I'm wrestling with.
Sure.
But let your kids see you working through that.
Do we
so they
guard
can
them
see,
or do we bring them in?
Right.
Yeah,
What's the
what would you-
balance on that?
Right. That's really good insight and a good question. I think because as we're in those teen years, especially if you bring up those age ranges, we're coaches. If we're still trying to just lay out rules, like you can't do this, you can't do that, then as soon as they leave, they're going to say, "Oh, no more rules, I'm good."
Yeah,
so
right.
doesn't mean the rules go away, but you got to start coaching. And part of coaching is to say, "I'm going to model this for you." And so living out loud, sometimes that could be as simple as when something happens on a TV show and the whole family's hanging around and it's not appropriate. If you watch TV at all, it's not going to take long. That's going to happen. Yeah. You may not know it, but your kids are going to turn to you. They're watching to see, what is dad going to do in this moment? Because we know that's not right. This is awkward. And if you just like move on, what you just communicated to them is, oh, okay, he said this is no big deal. Right. This is, and so to pause and say, you know what? I really like this show, but we're not going to bring this into our house, man. And I'll tell you why. It's not just because I'm setting a rule for you. It's because my heart doesn't need this, And so we're not going to live with this. So as much as I like this is a way I can take up my mat because I don't want to give place for this kind of attitude in my life.
Yeah, that's good.
And I brought up the news, and it was not supposed to be a facetious comment, although some people chuckled. Sure. There's a lot of people who are overwhelmed by the news right now. Yeah. Well, so watch the news. That's a good thing to do with your kids. And pause and say, okay, let's unpack this. What does this tell us about? Right. How does this relate to who God is? Especially we see people on both sides who are portraying that they represent Christ. Right. Okay, and then move on. But when you leave it on all day, now it defines you, embodies you, everything else. And so that's a good chance for a lot of parents right now to say, hey, you notice we've turned the TV off? And let me tell you something. We apologize because we've been so caught up in this that we've forgotten that we can also love our neighbors right now.
Yeah. That's huge.
That's good.
That's so good. Well, if you hadn't watched the sermon, you can access all of that at kingsland.org. Just scroll down to the latest sermon. It's so good. As we get into, we'll talk about coming next week, but we always want to transition and kind of share some resources that go along. So Joe's going to drop a resource, empoweredhomes.org. It's a podcast with Alan Arnold, who wrote a book called Chaos Can't. It's a really good book. It's an easy read. I just interviewed him, and it's just so pertinent, talking about our predicaments and how chaos seems so personal because it is personal. The enemy wants us to stumble. And so how do we look at chaos and say chaos can't? So it's a great resource. Check it out there. We also want to give a win at home question of the week.
Win at home.
Win at home.
Yeah.
Question
one of my favorite questions. Sit around the table, the 5 meaningful meals that we're trying to do with our families. I hope you're still trying to do that. Here's a question for you guys to use tonight or this week. How do you know I love you? Ask your kids or your spouse, how do you know I love you?
How do you know I love you?
And just see what their responses are. It gives you a window into hearts of what people think and what they say. And so use that how you will.
Yeah, it's such a great opportunity to bless your kids too. And once they share whatever it is, you get to just pour on them a blessing. It's awesome. I love that question, Joe.
Good question.
So transitioning now, we're in the last week. Any teasers you want to give of the sermon
series? I'm not afraid of teasers. I would love it if they already know what's coming and then they remember it, and when they take notes, they're ready. I've saved. I've kind of planted these seeds in the sermons the last few weeks. What happens after this guy gets up is very significant, and we have to remember, in the big picture, that the miracles in the Gospel of John are more than for the sake of saying, hey, Jesus has the power to raise the dead or turn water to wine, all this. They're all stated, John tells us, so that we can know that Jesus is the Son of God. So they represent significant parts of what's happening. In this case, this no one really argues. John 5 is all about grace. So the very next thing that happens is a very pivotal point in the gospel. Some would point to the most significant kind of fulcrum in the gospel. Up to the middle of John 5, everything that's happening in the Gospel of John is making Jesus famous, building his popularity. Everybody wants to be around him. And then all of a sudden, the Jews hate him. And they want to kill him. And so everything from here leads down, leads to the cross. So what's the pivotal point? They get super angry that this guy walks in the temple courts and they realize he's carrying his mat. So this is, they have taken the fourth commandment on the Sabbath, and they've taken it to an extreme, which is what they did. They want everything to be about rules. And so they see that, and they've decided you cannot walk more than 1,000 feet. You can't carry a burden because that's labor. Well, it's nutty, okay? And so they ask him. He honestly doesn't know. I mean, some commentaries try to make it sound as though he has denied Jesus, or he's afraid, or or he ratted on Jesus. I don't think that at all. I think he went to the temple courts because this is the only way he knew to give thanks to God. And then once he realizes it's Jesus, he testifies, kind of like the woman of Samaria, the woman at the well. All that to say, the point about the Sabbath becomes very important in the point about grace that John is seeking to make in John chapter 5. Because what does Jesus say? And this is going to be the pivotal point in the sermon that I'll unpack on Sunday. They're saying, you can't do this. How could you heal on the Sabbath? How could he carry that load on the Sabbath? And he said, don't you know I and my Father are working? So all they care about, they've forgotten about the Sabbath rule. They're just mad that he said my Father. He didn't say our Father. He said my Father, and he's clearly implying that he is the Son of God. And that just blows their minds, okay? So it starts. But we don't want to miss the point that Jesus is making. Listen, I'm working so that you can rest. I'm the reason for the Sabbath, guys, Yeah. And so that really should change. It turns on its head how we're operating in crisis, how we deal with our predicaments, is we get to rest first, and then we get to work out of that rest. That's very different from working really hard so we can rest.
Yeah.
Need to hear that this week, especially too. That's right.
Yeah,
That's
super
good.
excited. It's been a great sermon series, and this is going to be a fantastic. Oh man,
Thanks, Bob.
It's going to be so good.
Make sure they grab their assessment cards.
Yeah,
too.
get a card. Other thing coming up is next steps at North Katy. If you've been at North Katy, just wanting more information, next steps will be this
24th.
Sunday, the 24th. Joe, man, that was good.
It's good. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you
Pastor.
for
Hey, my
joining
pleasure.
us.
Anytime, guys.
Absolutely.
Good
That's
morning.
Leave a
Kingsland.
comment. We'll be checking it all day.
Yep. We'll see you.
Good.
Thank you.